The story that is being presented today is nothing short of explosive in its tone and content. Larry Fink, the chief executive officer of BlackRock, which is the largest asset management in the world, is the target of the subpoena that was just made public by the Congressional Committee. Fink is the only person who holds this position. As a result of the possibility that BlackRock exerted undue influence over the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, in order to postpone the launch of an exchange-traded fund, ETF, for XRP, the House Financial Services Committee has made the decision to launch an exhaustive investigation into the matter. The accusation is that, according to reports, BlackRock put pressure on the authorities to suspend the exchange-traded fund, ETF, so that they could continue to amass XRP while prices were low. This allowed them to continue using the cryptocurrency. We are currently witnessing a high-stakes game of financial warfare in which institutions are rewriting the rules in their advantage while normal investors are being left behind. This scenario is a perfect example of the situation we are currently in. During the course of this investigation, a legal instrument that is known as a subpoena, duces tecum, is considered to be one of the most necessary components. In this document, which is now a matter of public record, Larry Fink and BlackRock are expected to report all relevant internal correspondence that is linked with XRP, officials from the SEC, and digital asset regulation. This document is now a matter of public record. This includes any and all papers that pertain to their ETF strategy, including but not limited to emails, internal memos, meeting logs, and any other materials that you may find pertinent. In order to shed light on what many people believe has been going on behind closed doors for years, Congress is undertaking a strategic move to publish the information. Rather than being a simple phishing attempt, this probe is a strategic effort that has been carefully planned out. At this point in time, it is a moment that will define the circumstances for retail investors. In today's environment, the idea that the most powerful financial institution in the world may have purposefully manipulated market conditions in order to gain an edge is no longer considered to be a conspiracy theory. Authorities are currently conducting an investigation into the matter. BlackRock is demanding that the XRP exchange-traded fund, ETF, be delayed. This strategy is really easy to understand. Instant legitimacy, massive purchasing pressure, and a significant increase in price are all outcomes that result from an exchange-traded fund, ETF, that has been granted the opportunity to trade. When you are still in the process of accumulating in a way that is covert, discreet, and affordable, the last thing you want is for it to happen to you. It is plausible that BlackRock was able to keep prices artificially low while covertly creating a large investment by slowing down the process and acting through back channels to create difficulties. This would account for the possibility that BlackRock was successful. As an additional point of interest, they will proceed to alter the narrative at the proper time. Make sure that the approval for the exchange-traded fund, ETF, is given, and then profit from the price's continued ascent. According to this methodology, the process of high-level financial engineering is carried out. At this point, the question that needs to be answered is whether or not it was also illegal. This investigation is being driven by more than just a feeling of mistrust as its primary motivation. Specifically, this is due to a long-standing dissatisfaction with the SEC's delayed and inconsistent approach to Bitcoin exchange-traded funds, ETFs, which has been the cause for this. Despite the fact that Ripple has acquired legal clarity, investors and analysts have become curious about the cause of the delay in the announcement. What is the rationale behind the differing treatment of XRP? It is possible that we will at long last be able to acquire answers thanks to the participation of Congress. Additionally, if it turns out that regulatory slow-walking was driven by persuasion from BlackRock, it has the potential to kick off the most significant ETF policy shakeup in the history of the United States. This is because BlackRock has the ability to influence regulatory decisions. Following the completion of this investigation, one of the most significant issues that has surfaced is the so-called revolving door problem. This problem is a reference to the cozy relationship that exists between regulators and Wall Street corporations. It is not a secret that former regulators of the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, routinely find jobs in private sector enterprises after their tenure in office have ended. High-ranking executives from financial firms routinely migrate into positions inside regulatory authorities. This is similar to the situation described above. A network of influence is established as a result of this, which has the ability to substantially undermine the faith of the general population. The credibility of the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC itself is currently in peril as a result of the conversations that have been subpoenaed and have the potential to shed light on the relationships in question. Not only will the demonstration of regulatory capture have an impact on XRP, but it may also alter the rules of engagement between Washington and Wall Street. This is because regulatory capture is a phenomenon that has been proved to be true. A shift in the plot is currently taking place in real time, and it is happening right now. The fact that Congress, appears to be rebranding itself as a champion of ordinary investors is unquestionably a development that the public should be pleased with. The practices of favoritism and backdoor agreements, which are methods that enable huge corporations to manipulate the results of elections, are being criticized by legislators affiliated with both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. XRP will serve as the major case study for this investigation, which has the potential to result in broad reform. This reform may include the promotion of transparency and the approval of exchange-traded funds, ETFs, as well as the exposure of the double standards that have hampered innovation in the digital asset market. For years, retail investors have been ridiculed, but there is a chance that they will finally get the respect they deserve. This is a possibility. First, let's talk about the price. If the findings of this investigation suggest that XRP was purposely suppressed through regulatory manipulation, the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, will be subjected to a significant amount of pressure to swiftly approve the exchange-traded fund, ETF. This might potentially cause a huge reaction in the market if it were to occur on its own. With pent-up demand, institutional entry, and the sheer psychological relief of finally seeing justice served, analysts believe that XRP could potentially surge past $500. This is because of the combination of these factors. This would be caused by a number of different variables working together. Furthermore, this is just the beginning of the process. In the midst of these enormous constraints, every financial media outlet will cover the approval of exchange-traded funds, ETFs, if it is given the go-ahead to be approved. Suddenly, investors who have been sitting on the sidelines can begin to participate in the market. In a sense, one could claim that the momentum cannot be stopped. The fact is that BlackRock is not treating this matter lightly at all. Their commitment to transparency and equitable market conduct. If I'm being completely honest with you, the subpoena is more convincing than any press release that could possibly be issued. Please do not consider this a request for the opinions of Congress. Those individuals are making a demand for the evidence. Each and every internal document, each and every record of SEC meetings, and each and every memo that is pertinent to XRP must be preserved. There is a possibility that BlackRock's entire exchange-traded fund strategy may be brought to a halt if even a single piece of damning correspondence were to be brought to light. Furthermore, Larry Fink has been compelled to testify while under oath in order to avoid further legal consequences. At this very moment, the entirety of his legacy is at peril. Are there any repercussions that will result from his pleading the fifth? What happens if he decides not to answer significant questions in order to avoid putting himself in a position where he could be incriminated? This would be a momentous milestone in and of itself, one that would indicate the level to which this scandal is ubiquitous on a widespread scale. In the case that he gives an open response and rejects everything, the burden of evidence will shift to the documents, and this time it will not be a trial that will be accountable for demonstrating his innocence. Rather, it will be the United States Congress that will be in charge of doing so. It is expected that cameras will be rolling, videos will be shared widely, and the entire public will be paying close attention to each and every new word. This time period has the potential to become a defining moment not only for XRP but also for all digital assets. It is feasible that this will be the case. Assuming that BlackRock's plan is disclosed, it will communicate to all of the other institutional participants that the previous approach is no longer viable. This will send a message that the prior approach is no longer viable. At this point, it is time to bid farewell to the era of covert accumulation, dealings in the backroom, and regulatory capture. A new era of responsibility and openness is starting to emerge, and it is becoming increasingly apparent, in which digital assets compete against one another on a level playing field and in which the competition is fair. For a considerable amount of time, XRP has been the underdog, but it has the potential to be the spark that ignites the fire. Ripple Labs has been keeping a strategic position behind the scenes while remaining mute about it. They are aware that this congressional probe has the ability to do more for the credibility of XRP than any marketing push or judicial ruling could ever achieve. This is something that they are well knowledgeable about. When the narrative shifts in the opposite direction and XRP is eventually seen as the victim of institutional